Welcome to another episode of Redesigning Your Relationships. I'm your host, Giovanna Burgess White, with my co-host.
Hello, I'm Yvette Valdenegro. Happy to be here.
And welcome to part 5 out of 6 out of our mini-series, Establishing Boundaries. Today we're going to be talking about extended family and your relatives. But before we do that, if you're watching us live, thank you so much. If you're listening to us or watching us on the replay, we will still answer all your questions in the comments. If this is the first time you're here, Yvette and I are relationship coaches. We help you redesign relationships that you deserve and desire, and really focus on women redesigning their marriage, recovery after divorce, and rebalance with your business. We started this mini series 4 weeks ago. So if you didn't listen to parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, go back. Super important. Part 1 is establishing boundaries with yourself. Part 2 is establishing boundaries with your business. Part 3, establishing boundaries with your
Partner.
children.
Our children?
Children, yes. And then part 4 was with your spouse or partner. And like I said, today we're going to do extended family and relatives. Next week, we will finish off with friends. And then we have a bonus episode on your relationship with time.
Yeah.
So we're happy to have you here. Thank you for joining.
Okay. And again, let's recap. Because if someone is just now coming in and they're like, okay, I'm catching part 5. What in the world did you guys talk about? You just listed all the things we talked about. But what is a boundary? And a boundary is just a way to establish in the line, however visual you want that to be, or you just completely abstract. But basically you're saying to yourself, I'm establishing who I am and what works for me. Those can also be your personal standards. They can be guidelines. They can be your personal goals. And then we also want to create these healthy boundaries because this is the best way to be connected with the people that we're actually trying to establish boundaries with, and the best way to just form mutual respect. And then we always say that when we tend to go into unhealthy boundaries, then unfortunately that's where we really allow anger, resentment, guilt, isolation to kind of come in, where we're like, okay, now we're kind of stuck because what do I do now? And the biggest thing that we'll talk about over and over and over again with all of these boundaries is it really begins with you. You need to really understand who you are, what you want in these relationships. And then secondly, you've got to be able to communicate it. People are not mind readers. We're good. Everybody's great, but everybody's not that great. We don't have ticker tapes on our forehead. We cannot know what is going on unless you communicate it. And it's really not fair to yourself, and it's not fair to someone else to have an expectation or standard that they have no idea what you even want. And you may not even really know what you want.
Yep. And the definition, or what we'd like to talk about what exactly does a healthy boundary look like? Key elements. Healthy boundaries have 3 key elements: your physical, your mental, and your emotional health. And they look different in every relationship, and they may change over time. Healthy relationships involve communicating your wants and needs in a relationship, as well as respecting the others in the relationship. So super important. It's a two-way street. And I'm glad we're talking about this because yesterday I talked about the holidays. And as you know, we all have, normally all of us either go to our relatives come, we host, Thanksgiving's right around the corner. Thanksgiving break is in 29 days. Then we have the Christmas break, New Year. So you have to create those boundaries. And so today we're going to talk about that. How do we create boundaries with your parents, your siblings, your really parents, siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, all the other family in your life? It's a great topic because most people want to just please everybody, and you can't. And if you don't have a clear goal, or you don't have a clear clarity on what you need, and I talked about this yesterday, what can you really handle in seasons in your life? You can't have a perfect relationship with everyone. You can't be available for everyone all the time. This is where you really need to state what your boundaries are in the relationship with your extended family.
Yeah. And this one, it's about let's just go with the why. Why is this so hard, right? Why is this? I personally think because these are our closest people to us in some regard, like especially when you talk about parents, siblings, but it also is extended family, aunts and uncles. You may be around them all the time. You may not be around them all the time. But of course,
In-laws. Yeah.
The obvious is that we want everybody to like us. We want to have fun, wonderful experiences with all of them, but we all know that that doesn't always happen, right? Um, and I think sometimes it's also because, and I this is a goofy example, but I think it's real. You know how you have like the aunt or uncle who's like, oh, and they're always talking to you. They always pinch your cheeks like they did when you were two, and now you're older and you're like, I'm an adult, and you're still pinching because they see you as you were before, and you've gone through years of changing. I mean, think about it. They may have seen you when you were in high school, junior high, whatever, college, and then you get married, you have kids, you're doing your own thing, and now but their mindset is, but you're my little so and so, and I'm going to treat you like this, and I'm still going to tell you what to do, and I still know what's best. Let's just be real. They do, in the sense, because when people are older, they've gone through more life experiences, but they're not you, so they don't know what is necessarily best for your family, and in I mean for you, and in all that comes all the different pieces. And I love that we don't ever script any of this, but I did kind of write, because on my mind, I'm like, I love giving our listeners things that are really practical, because it's like the why, and then it's like, okay, does anybody else go through this? Because everybody always thinks they're on their own, right? So an encouraging word would be, we say this all the time. First and foremost, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no in any relationship, but even when it comes to extended family.
Mhm.
And some tips would be, um, huge. Try to avoid family gossip.
Mhm.
This is probably one of the first ways to tear down boundaries, because if you're in the mix of doing things that are not good and healthy and productive, then how in the world are you going to tell people to get out of your mix when it's not healthy, good, and productive? It's not a good thing to be hypocritical. So be a good example. Um, what do I say? Discuss topics that are not shared or discussed. I think what I'm trying to say with this is that, with your family, it's okay to like discuss things with them that necessarily people aren't talking about. And I kind of feel like it's like your family may do something that someone else's family doesn't do. The way you decide to, if you're religious, to be religious, it's okay if someone else's religion is different. And it's okay to discuss those topics. Sometimes I think we just avoid them, but be respectful in how you're actually talking about those things. Because whether it's politics, which seems to just drive a huge wedge in people, it's okay to talk politics, but just be respectful of other people's thoughts and opinions, and maybe do them in general terms, not like you're trying to convert someone to be the
Yeah,
way
but
exactly the way you are.
that's a touchy subject. I would say that we don't do that. Actually, that's a boundary that we don't talk about religion, or we don't talk about, actually, there's a lot of things that when we get together, we don't talk about, because not everybody is in that mind of being respectful, and especially the older generations. So we don't. So I think that's where you establish the boundaries
But
with
that's your boundary. That's what
yourself.
I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like, you have to be respectful of, no, like, read the room,
yeah.
basically. It's like if someone's family, like your family, if it's like, oh my God, like I can tell you right now, my family, if someone even brings up certain topics of politics in front of certain people, I automatically go, nope, we're not going there. It's not gonna happen.
They know that before they come. So that's what I'm saying. This is where you have, or before we get together, especially during the holidays, you gotta have those conversations, because they won't know that if you don't tell them. It's really, really
Right, but
important.
these are general things we're talking about, not necessarily just the holidays. So you
Yeah.
have, again, it goes back to communication. You've got to communicate, hey, for our family, this is off topic. For someone else's family, they may go, hey, we don't really care. We can bring up these special, or we can bring up these topics as long as we don't dive too deep. And if you start to be disrespectful, then we're going to opt out and say, hey, thanks for sharing, but I really don't want to continue this conversation. Because again, it's different for different people. Those are different boundaries that different people want to. I mean, think about it. If someone's actually, imagine the Bushes for Christmas and Thanksgiving. Is their personal boundary, oh my God, we're never going to talk about politics? That's what they all do. So, in some degree, for their Christmas, and maybe like, well, how do we even talk? I don't know. Well, I'm just saying that for
Play
different.
a game, like when we play a game when we go out to network. We play a game about not talking about certain things. But yeah, I think it's important too that, well, and I want to just talk about like parents in general, because I think that's a topic that a lot of people don't like to talk about, especially in different cultures. And if you're the firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn, all these like things that your family or you were raised with that you have to do or that you're in charge of, especially being the firstborn, those are all things that you need us to go back and have conversations with your parents about and your siblings if you have siblings, and just have real conversations around your life and your boundaries. Because we know we see this. People live their life based on, well, that's what my parents told me, and that's what their grandparents told me, and that's how it was in my culture, so that's how we do it. But people don't want to. Like, there are so many people that use that, like, when their parents die, when their it's like, well, that's what but who said that you were supposed to do that? Even if your parents said that, you make your decisions in your life. So those are really important things to talk about with your parents and with your siblings on, hey, we may not see eye to eye, but we need to come up with what's the plan. Like, don't put those expectations on any of us, or like the holidays, vacations. It's like, just because that's how you grew up or that's what you were taught doesn't mean you have to. All of the shoulds and the have tos, you're writing your own book. So I think that's why it's really hard when people try to establish boundaries with their family, because it's like, I don't want to tell them how I really feel, but then you can't use that against them because you never talk to them about it.
Again, goes back to communication. They don't know what they don't know, and that's not fair. So what you're ultimately doing is creating a bigger wedge than if you would just speak up and go, this is how I feel. Because here's the deal, like you just said, if you describe this how I feel and they choose to not accept that, that's a them thing, not a you thing. Because you've already said, well, but this is what makes me feel more comfortable as a person. And if they can't respect that, then you have to make more decisions as to, okay, now what am I going to do from here? Talking about parents too, you also need to establish your own personal, if you have kids, your own personal parenting styles, especially because I've seen this on the playground, you see it at school, you see it in families. Not every single family parents the same way.
Yep.
Rules and regulations, what you're allowed to do, what kids can do, what you can. One kid can take a ball from Johnny on the playground. One mom goes, "Oh no, that's fine. He can take the ball," and the other mom goes, "No, he can't." Like, then it becomes, well, which mom is right? I'm not going to say whose mom's right. It's more to say what works for you, your child, your boundary, how you behave on the playground, how you behave in someone else's home. Those are all things, which leads to another thought. It's super important if you do have kids, when you go into family environments, coach your kids before you get there. Explain to them what your family boundaries are. If Aunt so and so says, if cousin da 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 does, if like they need to know what their safety is. Like, mom, will you back me up? Or okay, I can't jump on the furniture. Like little friendly reminders as far as like, this is the way our family conducts themselves, and this is what my expectations of you are going into this family environment, so that they know. Like, it's like, yes, this is what my mom asked me to do, or this, if I'm put in this kind of situation, this is the expectation. Because they're going to learn. Again, they don't know what they don't know until you tell them.
Yeah. And I know you guys are thinking this is why we did it in mini series, because you're like, oh my God, you guys are crazy. This is so many relationships in our life, and we have to come up with yeah, it's a lot of work. But if these are important relationships in your life, you need work, which is why we started with yourself first. And yeah, it's going to take time, but it's also having the conversations, and not having the conversations in a heated moment. Like, when something goes wrong, you're like, oh, but this is who I am. It's not what I mean. No,
On the car right there.
yeah, yeah. Like, you really do need to, again, if you want to have a relationship, it's a two-way street. There's work involved. No relationship is easy. None. So this is where you go back and you have to sit down and prioritize what relationships are important to me. And there may be some in your family and your relatives that aren't. That's fine. But the ones that are, you need to have clarity around that. And it needs to be before an event, before you go over to their house. Like, it's not okay to just bombard somebody with, this is just the way that I'm going to be, and this is my boundaries with you. And if you don't accept them, then we can't be in a relationship. Because I think that's where people get frustrated. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to create this. And that's also fear. We talk about fear all the time. They're so scared about what the other person's going to think, or if you're completely changing the way you're living your life, which happens all the time. And different generations and different cultures, they just decide to break those traditions, and that's okay. But you
Yeah.
have to have the conversation with them, whoever the other person is in that relationship. They may not understand you 100%, but they're going to be like, thank you for spending the time talking to me about it, letting me know how you feel, why you're doing it, because there's a reason why. And 9 out of 10, they're probably going to be like, great, now I'm going to meet you halfway, because if they want to be in a relationship with you, they're going to meet you halfway. And if they don't, then that's okay. You stated your boundaries, you stated your grounds, and you just move on to the next relationship.
I think we could do a whole podcast just on in-laws alone.
Oh, totally.
I mean, just that whole topic as far as just like, what do you share?
Yeah.
What can you share? What do you not share? Because it's really two different families. You're coming from two different backgrounds. And then it's like your loyalty. Where's your own personal loyalty?
Yeah.
What might be comfortable? I mean, there's just so many things there. But again, it goes back to first and foremost. Huh?
Intertwined. It's like the relationship with your in-laws can affect the relationship with your spouse. It's like a whole thing.
It is a whole thing. But again, it goes back to you and then communicating with your partner, and then the two of you communicating with the in-laws, so that because you're really establishing your new boundaries with your partner.
Yeah. And they change.
There is a lot. There is a lot to this topic, which again, that's why we offer the connection calls, because if you're listening and you're like, you guys spit out so much stuff that's like,
Yeah.
one, are you guys, it feels like you're there at my family. Feels like, are you guys on the fly on the wall in my family gatherings? Because this is everything that you just mentioned happens all the time. No, but we've been there. We totally understand, and then we hear it all the time, because again, it's a dynamic. It doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it bad. It doesn't make your extended family evil. It just means that there needs to be clear communication, and that can happen.
Yep. So we will be back with part 6, which is friends. Oof. It's like, say, I mean, they're all hard. They're all communication. They're all establishing your boundaries. But we're gonna come with friends, because I feel like this one, friends and family, there tends to be more endings to friendships or with family members. It's okay. We're here to tell you you're not alone. It happens, and it seems like it's like a lot at the very beginning, but when we talk about time later on our bonus episode, and I mean, yeah, you only have so much time in your day, in your week, in your month, in your life. So you want to make sure you're spending it with the people who really do serve you and that you want to be in relationships with. So we'll be back with part 6 next week. And again, if you want to jump on a call with us, we do complimentary virtual connection calls. You can get that anywhere that you're watching, listening. Just click the link, book a connection call with us. We would love to help you with any relationship that you're wanting to redesign in your life. Until next week, we'll see you again.